there, and welcome to a special edition of Always Off Brand. I'm one of your fabulous co-hosts, Hayley Brucker and the News, joined by another fabulous co-host of mine, Scott Oshman.
Hello, Hayley.
Hi. You said you don't have a falsetto today, so
No falsetto
should I?
Should I need you? You're a true alto, and you got it. You got it. That's in the bag for you, an alto. But falsetto's there for you.
Is it?
Because I announced the Seattle Marathon. It was this past Sunday. Hope everybody had a great, happy Thanksgiving. We are missing one of our teammates, Summer Jubileer. She's unavailable because this is special. We are not recording on our normal cadence, our normal time, our normal day.
That's right. That's right. But it's a very special occasion, Scott.
It is. Did you ever get Thanksgiving real quick?
You know what? I had 2 Thanksgivings.
Oh.
I had a Thanksgiving with my dear friends here in the town where I live. I won't drop a pin, but everybody knows anyways. So I had a Thanksgiving with my dear friend and her family, and then kind of an impromptu Thanksgiving at my sister's house. So I ate and drank 2 days in a row, just copious amounts of food, and holy smokes, I feel like turkey.
Yeah, one of my favorite Dave Matthews songs, old song.
Yeah.
I ate too much. Drank too much.
Too much.
My Thanksgiving was glorious, but we might never host ever again.
You said you had like 20 people in your house.
It's unbelievable. The amount of work. I mean, my wife and I, the day after, I don't think I moved him up. We binged Diplomat all the way through. The only thing I had to do is feed the animals, the zoo. I'm like, this is another sign we're getting old. We had 20 people over. It was glorious. We had a great time. I didn't get the house put back together until Saturday night from Thursday.
But that's okay. It's not like those people are going to come back and say, "Ha, your dishes are still dirty, Scott. You haven't swept the floor yet." Nobody cares.
We had a great time, but good Lord, that just kicked us. Now, because this is a special episode, okay, that doesn't mean, let me bring her, hold on, I got to start the music first, and then I'm going to bring her to the stage here. I got a new, that doesn't mean our guests don't get big time intros. Bringing her to the YouTube stage. A reminder, we are on YouTube, Always Off Brand. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the stage on this special episode is the Director of Consumer Insights and Strategy, Retail and Consumer Goods at Salesforce. Ladies and gentlemen, please get your hands together for Caila Schwartz.
I don't think I've ever gotten an intro quite like that ever before. So thank you. That was awesome.
We're just a little different here. We try to keep things fun and interesting.
Is that just a fantastic title? I love your title. I might just keep saying it over and over again. It's so good.
Thank you.
God, so the first question is obvious. We big thanks to Vanu Kumar who introduced us, an old compadre of yours who I got to meet at E-Tail.
Yes.
Who said, you got to talk to Caila. She knows. You want to know what the consumer's doing? She knows what the consumer is doing. So coming off of Black Friday, Cyber Mondays, Cyber Week, whatever we're calling it. I don't know what you call it at Salesforce.
Turkey freaking 25 is my trademark term.
Yeah, thank you. Turkey forever. What is this? What is the consumer? What's happening?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying we call it Cyber Week, and we track it a little bit differently than the way others track it. So we start tracking Cyber Week on Tuesday before Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. So it's a 7-day period for us. And what we saw was a lot of spending. It was a record-breaking holiday, which is great for the industry. Global sales were up 7%, U.S. sales up about 5%, but record-breaking spend across every single region, especially what came out of Europe. Europe was really interesting, but a really strong holiday so far.
So what was interesting about Europe? Oh, go ahead, Hayley.
Hold on. I wanted to give our listeners a number. Like you just quoted big percentages. Those are huge percentage increases. But my data backs that up with $334 billion in global spend over that time period. That's a lot of money.
And if you're too lazy to see Caila's incredible recaps on the Linky, we call it the Linky here, she kind of lays this out. That's what kind of we'll walk through. So I'm interested now I'm going to poke holes on different stuff. We have other large data sets. Now, just to explain to people, if they're, Salesforce is sneaky because you guys bought Demandware back in the day. When I was still walking around. And before I was like, oh my God, Demandware like runs ecom for ginormous brands that nobody really I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of sneaky. Then Salesforce, everybody knew them from the CRM world. But then they went and bought them. And you guys are one of the biggest ecom shopping cart, quote unquote, in the world. Like it's not even close. It's just ginormous.
Well, I think what's really cool too is that it's not just the commerce experience, right? We're also tracking what's happening in marketing and customer service. And so it's like the entire end-to-end from discovery, purchase, and post-purchase is all powered by our products. And what my team is doing is we have a data set of 1.5 billion global shoppers. And
is that it? Just 1.5 billion?
Wow.
Just 1.5 billion. And we're seeing what they're doing. We've been tracking them for over 10 years now. So we have a lot of historical context for where the consumer's been, where we see them going. It's a lot of data. So holiday is peak. It's what we work towards all year. Like literally we're thinking about next holiday, what we're doing, how we're tracking. And so it's an exciting program to be a part of.
So what interests you, the 7% global? Again, we'll talk about the different there's always nuance to these. There's a little bit of variance between all the big data sets. I'll just call it like that. They kind of try to report out and make the headlines. What was interesting about Europe to you?
Well, Europe outperformed the US. It outperformed North America. And Europe is probably one of the more larger established e-commerce regions to compare to. We see a lot of growth coming out of Middle East and Africa and Latin America. But Europe is interesting because on the size scale, it's probably as big as the United States. And so Europe grew double digits over the week. And we haven't seen that. And if we look across every single country within Europe, it also grew. Even the UK grew really well. And I think it signals a couple of things to me. Number one, the growing relevance of Cyber Week around the world. So Cyber Week, kind of forget, it's a US event. And we're starting to see it grow in other places across Asia, definitely Europe, Latin America. And so that's number one. And then number two, the difference between the US consumer and the European consumer. Coming out of the pandemic, the European consumer was really conservative, really held back on spend, whereas the US consumer never really stopped spending.
Oh, no.
No. Culturally, it makes sense, right?
That's just not how we roll.
Definitely not. We're a consumption-based economy. So now, a few years past that, you kind of see the US consumer feeling, just a little bit of those, fatigue with price increases and high interest rates and all of that. Whereas the European consumer is, getting a little bit more stable. And not that they aren't dealing with similar macroeconomic headwinds, but they're financially a little bit better positioned to spend. And we definitely saw them spending.
That's super interesting to me because they, now I could go on a rant about the fact that Cyber Week is now a big deal across the world, because if you don't understand this, anybody listening or watching today, the United States of America and our beautiful capitalistic consumer economy, as you so well stated, this was just a thing for us. We've infected everybody. I used to call on Canada. Was more involved in European manufacturers and brands. They didn't go on sale like we go on sale. We've injected the needle to everybody else. I'm not here to argue whether that's wrong or right. From a manufacturers and brand side, it's not a lot of fun.
No,
It's not a lot of fun. And from a retail side, it's not as fun, because in Canada and Europe, it was very if they went on sale, it was so special. It was unique. It was precise.
Yep.
And it was just to do a very certain thing. And now we've infected the rest of the world. Sorry for that rant, but.
Well, it's true. Even if you look at the discounting in Europe versus the US and even Canada now, the increase in discounting compared to like a normal period is still very slight. They're not a huge discounting culture. And so they do discount, but across this week, but it is interesting that is starting to accelerate in those regions. But what's also really interesting that came out of this week was Canada. So Canada is, especially, we've been tracking consumer sentiment for the past few years, and the Canadian consumers really been struggling. Very low consumer sentiment, very low spend. And this Cyber Week, they came out so hard. They got the best discounts from anyone we ever saw, like better than the US. The retailers up in Canada dug deep.
Now, what kind? Because here, I mean, I continue to age myself, but 20% used to be a big deal. Now it's like a yawn. 20% doesn't really move the needle in the US. So what kind of discounts are we talking about, Caila?
So across the US, we averaged about 27, 28%. In Canada, they went up to 31, 32, 33% average across the week. On some peak days, we saw over 30. So just...
Damn. Sorry, there's a lot of sound effects you're not using.
I like the sound
effects. Because that is a damn. We have been hovering around 27, 28%. When you look at Amazon Prime Day, which we're big into the Amazon ecosystem, it has been hovering between 27, 28. It goes back up and down. So that's super interesting.
Yeah. And the Canadian consumer really saw meaningful decreases in pricing this year too, which I think also helped accelerate their spending. Something that I get asked a lot is, does the shopper know if they're getting a good deal? And a lot of people think that shoppers can't tell. Like, if they see a percentage off, they just take it at face value. But no, what we've seen in our data is if they are meaningfully getting a good deal, which means that they're not paying more per item than they were last year, or they're paying less, they will convert at much higher rates. And that's what we saw in Canada. Canada average selling price actually went down, whereas in the US, we saw it go up. And there's a few different things playing into that, but very interesting, and kind of speaks to the importance of price sensitivity in the current market and how it's impacting consumers around the world.
Okay, so is the obvious why? Because of the tariffs and the trade wars and all this other stuff? And
yeah, well, in Canada, there's a huge buy from Canada movement.
Yes.
Huge. In fact, we did a global study asking consumers, like, what do you think of tariffs? How are they impacting your behavior? And Europe really wasn't, like, they're not really tuned in, but in North and South America, definitely, like, it's a top concern. And the Canadian consumer was the only consumer that said that ranked very high, that they're only buying items made in their own country. Even the US was like, that was the last thing in the list of priorities, which is so
talking a lot of trash here. But when it comes down to it, we want the best deal. We want the cheapest stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I'll raise my hand. I mean, I'm part of the problem. Okay, so let's focus on the US. If you unpack the big global numbers, what happened here in the United States of America?
Yeah, well, we still saw really strong growth. Sales were up around 5%. Cyber Monday was really the peak day for buying. I think what happened in the US was, especially if we look at the weeks leading into Cyber Week, we saw a really strong end of October. But then the closer we got, consumers pulled back. I think they were waiting to see, like, would Cyber Week discounts get any better than all the promotions that were coming in the weeks ahead. So we saw the US consumer pull back, which is not what we saw anywhere else. And then coming into Cyber Week, we saw a somewhat cautious Black Friday shopper, because I think my hypothesis is that what happened last year was that consumers bought too early in the week and deals got better as the later it went. So Cyber Monday, the deals were better than Black Friday. And then the Tuesday after Cyber Monday, the deals got even better. And so last year, there was a little bit of a tug of war with the consumer and the retailer on discounting. And there was an effort on behalf of retailers at the end of the week or once the week was over to say, hey, can we capture a little bit more demand? And I think this year the consumer caught on to that and said, okay, maybe if I wait a little bit longer, I'll get better deals. They definitely did get better deals. But what's interesting is when we look at yesterday's data, they still got a better average discount rate yesterday on Tuesday than they got both on Cyber Monday and Black Friday. So the retailers did the same thing that they did last year, which was hold on and wait and see how shoppers would buy and what demand would look like, which is a very interesting strategy. I don't know if it's the best strategy, but that's what happened.
Well, in recording here on December 3rd, 2025 here, Wednesday, but I recall last year kind of Cyber Monday sneaking up on everyone like, whoa, wow, yeah. Cyber Monday was way bigger than it's been historically. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a huge day, record-breaking day.
So is this a conditioning then? Are we the behavior of the consumer, we're conditioning for Cyber Monday?
I think that we're conditioning the consumer to wait as long as possible and hold out. I think what the consumer has understood is that the deal could always get better. And so they're going to wait till the last moment to see what the best and final offer is. But that's just on digital. So we have now moved past the top discounting moment that we'll see online. We don't even see discounting peak for the shipping cutoff around mid-December. But where we will see discounting peak is in store. So the last 4 days before Christmas, our in-store shoppers will get Cyber Week level discounts as retailers are trying to move all of that inventory at the very last minute. So there's still another discounting moment for the shopper. It just won't be online.
Interesting.
Hence my phrase, turkey freaking 25.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it lasts for 25 days. It's just discount after promo after discount.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, I'm in the market for a couple things. All right. And I feel like I need some equipment and I need a couple things. I need some new headphones. Anyway, I think that I kind of missed the boat here. I kind of slept through, I think, the largest discounts. So now I'm kind of, I'm part of the sad part. I might have to go to a store.
Careful.
I have to work through the whole week, so I don't get to partake at all in all of the deals.
Well, listen, I saw a lot of brick and mortar retails advertising pre-Black Friday week. So the week prior or the week before actual Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they had, Ulta was a great example. They had this whole week before. I'm going to call it turkey freaking 25. I need to watch myself because that's not what we're talking about here. But, they had a whole 7 days before Black Friday that they had another promo running. And so that's kind of opening and looking at the window the other direction of, okay, well, this is where we're starting. And that extends that consumer maybe confusion, maybe distrust. Maybe that's not the right word to use. But as we extend it both ways, do you have any data the week before Black Friday?
Yeah. So the week before Black Friday, sales were flat. So again, going back to the hypothesis of like the US consumer, especially. Now that's not true in Canada. It's not true in Europe. Europe and Canada were like very steady all the early weeks of November. But the US consumer really held back. Like once we got through October and we hit November, the US consumer kind of slowed down and said, okay, I see these deals coming through. I'm going to wait and see what Cyber Week brings. Now, this is on an aggregate basis, so I can't speak to how well certain campaigns did. The industry has really been trying over the past several years to pull that Cyber Week demand earlier. Just because there's so much volume during that week, it's easier to kind of relieve some of that high volume and get those orders shipping earlier. And we have a later Cyber Week this year. So the stakes are even higher, right? To get all those orders out the door. But yeah, we didn't see the US consumer on an aggregate basis take the bait on buying early.
Interesting. I saw a lot of big retailers try to run that sale early. So interesting.
Yeah, I know like Target was doing a really great job. I really enjoyed their deal. Every day they drop a new like set of deals. So I've been kind of just like, and they push it, if you have the app, they push it to your phone. So you get like an announcement, and I've been totally into that this year. It's super convenient.
Kind of the gamification of it.
Yeah, kind of like I have my wish list. I'm like, okay, what's going on sale this week today? And like, what can I check off my list? So
that's great.
Yeah. And speaking of Target and companies like Target,
yes,
Lowe's did this as well. And I think a couple others, the Black Friday experience, right? Like bringing the excitement back to Black Friday, I feel for brick and mortar retail was a little bit, they kind of dipped their toes in that water of, they had the idea of the bags and the buckets. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. I saw some.
Yeah. And if you were the first 100 people at Target, you could potentially win like a certain prize. And then with Lowe's, if your bucket could have like a $2,000 gift card in it, which was incredible. So kind of bringing back the in-store experience to Black Friday seemed to be like a new element, well, technically not new, but something that I don't think we've seen in years past, at least in recent history.
Well, Macy's had a Black Friday campaign that was only offered in store. Their Black Friday deals were not online. And it was a huge bust. So they're kind of under fire for it. And look at Scott. I think he has a rant on this, but hold on, Scott. I'm not done. Anyways, it was flop because there's only a certain, I think it was 443 Macy's stores across the US that if I remember that correctly, don't totally quote me on that. And it limited a lot of the access that shoppers had to those deals because they couldn't make it to the store. Maybe it was too far. Maybe they couldn't get there. There's a million reasons why.
Yeah.
But I think they lost a lot of momentum for this promo week in that specific campaign.
That is very interesting. I didn't hear about that. We don't have any Macy's in South Carolina, or at least not any near me. So
yeah,
I didn't. Poor Macy's. That's all I'll say. Poor
I know.
Macy's.
Bless their
I feel
heart.
terrible for them. And then the storms hit on the Midwest and East Coast. We had a lot of snow hit during Thanksgiving week and what have you. So I think that's an indicator. Okay, I'm gonna challenge. Not challenge. I mean, I'm not challenging your data. U.S. is up 5%. But to me, when I look at all of these things and the other reporting that comes out, so it can range, we're up 5% to 7%. I've seen, all over the place. I'm just like, yeah, but because of tariffs. Now, again, everything is in my brain from the manufacturer branding side is their tariff increases. And believe me, since 2018, people have been increasing the prices. Then we went through the pandemic where we didn't have to, we were back to the old days. We were old Canada. We were old Europe. Nothing was on sale because we didn't have any goods. And you know what? The smart brands and the retailers, they crept up prices. They love that because margins were fat. Margins were glorious. You think they've backed down? No. Now all of a sudden they got another bump. So part of in the finance world, right, on Wall Street and on CNBC and various things are like 5% is great, but if you average out an aggregate overall in consumer goods at a 7% increase of inflation, then it doesn't look as happy and great.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think this is, am I nuts here?
Well, I can say, again, we don't have the depth of data to say that tariffs are impacting pricing. What I can say is that it's likely that it does play a part in the holidays because we are seeing average selling price increase. However, there's another nuance, which I think is important to call out, which is that the verticals that did the best were in the US, were luxury and active apparel, active footwear, as well as home, in particular, furniture and appliances. So to me, what that says is that the type of buyer that was shopping over Cyber Week was potentially a higher income buyer. It was a buyer that has a little bit more financial stability than the average income consumer, or just a different type of consumer. And so there's potentially a segment of the US population that did not come to Cyber Week as strong as that other segment. And so that had an impact on driving average selling price up, because the categories that are doing better are those higher price point categories already, which also is a concern when we think about, the rest of the population. They might not, take tariffs aside for Cyber Week, but how is the current macroeconomic conditions affecting their overall buying power? They're pulling back on discretionary spend. We knew that going into the holidays. We know they're doubling down on things like essentials. And so for them, this was not a moment, where they were going and buying all of the extracurriculars. They were focused on the essentials. And that had an impact on driving up that average selling price.
All right. We're going to take a very small break because you wrote a lot and there's been a lot of chit chat. See what I did there? On LLMs, on AI, driving shopping. And we're going to take a very quick break. We'll be back with Caila Schwartz from Salesforce right after this, because I got more questions about that coming up next. Today's show, today's episode, today's everything for Always Off Brand is brought to you by Quickfire. That's right. Quickfire, quickfirenow.com. Check it out. Fully integrated marketing, digital marketing, consumer goods company. We do everything. That's right. We do marketplaces. Of course, the big Amazon. That's kind of my jam. But we also do Walmart. We're doing some Walmart. Come on, Walmart. We do everything, though. We do Shopify support. We do email campaigns. We do paid search, paid social. We're into the SEM, search engine marketing. We're into the SEO. We're into the GEO. We got everything going for you. We love small, medium-sized brands. Our pricing is just ridiculously easy, simple, and affordable. Flat rates, no percentage of revenue, no percentage of this, no percentage of that. We're easy. We're small. We're local to you. You got to come check us out. QuickFireNow.com, because we have a lot of fun. All right, we're back, Caila. We're going to talk about the A and the I. We're going to talk about Chat GPT. We're going to talk about Chit Chatty and old Jemmy. Old Jemmy, who's making a run. It was Chit Chat's world, and now it's making a run. By the way, just anecdotally, this morning and yesterday, I was trying to use old Chit Chatty for some headphones, and it's a struggle bus right now. I don't know if there's a power outage somewhere, but Chit Chatty is hurting right now, struggling. That's just anecdote.
Did you see Scott Wingo's post on the Linky this week?
Yes, I did. He's like, the hallucination. What did he?
He searched for something and a garden rake or a garden hoe came up. And he's like, what is this? Something's wrong with the chitty chat this week.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The pipe is only so big. And once you start, I think it's having a moment. But Caila Schwartz, let's talk about Salesforce. So talk about what the influence of AI, which we're all for. I'm in. But please, just everybody calm down.
Well, it was definitely a good week for AI shopping. I'll talk a little bit about how we track it. So when we talk about AI influenced shopping, we're looking at it from a couple of different ways that the consumer is using AI. So the first is traffic being driven from LLMs. The second is retailers that have shopper agents on their website. And then the third way is what we would consider more legacy AI, which is shoppers, AI-powered predictive shopper recommendations. So like the carousel on a product detail page that says, you may also like, and there's a list of recommendations. And so what we track when we talk about AI-influenced sales is we track shoppers that are actually clicking on the recommendations that they're getting from the AI. So they click on it and then they buy that item. So what we found in our data that for shoppers using these AI tools, 20% of the week's sales were influenced by shoppers clicking on the recommendation and then ultimately buying it on the retailer website. It also does not account for any like on third-party platform, AI platform purchases. So if that, I know that Perplexity announced a shopping tool, ChatGPT is doing some stuff there, but these are on retailer websites. So that's sort of the first metric that we're tracking. And then the next is the type of LLM traffic that we see being referred to retail websites. That is really growing. And we've seen this data consistently, that traffic converts better, especially than social media traffic and most other types of traffic. So direct, traditional search. So the traffic is highly qualified, likely because it's getting a lot of information and showing a high degree of intent before it even reaches the retailer's website. So the likelihood it will convert is very strong. It's also further down the funnel. Like if you're getting all that information and asking questions, you have much higher degree of intent to buy than like someone scrolling their social media feed and getting hit with an ad or an influencer post, and they're kind of at the very top of that funnel in that journey. The third way we were tracking it was with the use of shopper agents. So we looked at a set of retailers that launched shopper agents before Cyber Week. And this was just for US retailers, compared it to retailers that don't have shopper agents. And we compared their sales performance. And we found that for those retailers throughout the week with shopper agents, they actually grew. They saw faster sales growth over the Cyber Week period than those that did not have shopper agents. So that is not, it's not a one-to-one correlation for that specific stat, but it is interesting just to see their performance be a bit more accelerated than the base set.
Now, to be clear, just so the listener and watcher knows, you're not, this data set and all your analysis and everything is not the two largest in the US on an e-com basis in retailers. Is that correct? Like you're not pulling in Amazon and Walmart.
No. So
exactly. I just want to make sure that's clear to the listener when you look at this. This is also backs what we've been saying and I've been talking about is I think D2C is going to have another big moment. I think this absolutely validates, because that tracks to me, that logic tracks to me, and I'm okay with the attribution link there because it is a one-to-one direct line from clicking through chat or Gemini or every AI, whatever, going to that retailer's site. That tracks for me. Once they get in there in the purchase, I mean, you kind of like, okay, can I follow this path? Gets a little dicey for me. That's a personal problem, Caila. So I do see this makes sense to me. And I think this is a big moment. Now, if these checkouts become prevalent, meaning it's not that link out, then it's gonna distort here what we see going forward, right?
That's true. Yeah, exactly. So that will really change the tracking and the way it gets reported out. And it'll be interesting to see. We did announce a partnership with with OpenAI for a ChatGPT integration for catalogs and inventory. And we've had so many retailers interested in that integration. And, we've been talking about this since the spring, just the impact of AI. We've been studying it, talking to hundreds of retailers about this since June. And that's literally the number one thing that they want to talk about is how do we show up in a ChatGPT search or a Perplexity search? How do we get our brands in front of these shoppers? Because they're seeing it in their data too, which is so interesting. But one of the more interesting use cases, I think, for this technology is the brand-owned shopper agent. And we had Williams-Sonoma, you might have already seen this example, but it's one of our Agentforce customers, and they launched some shopper agents and some agents on their website. and they named theirs Olive, which I don't know if you've been checking out, but everyone has a name for their agent.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes.
I love Olive. That's very fitting.
I have
know, right?
critical commentary to the two biggest ones. I'm not in love with those names. I don't like Gemini because my wife's a Gemini, and are you a Gemini? So do you have two personalities? The joke is it's 2 for 1. When I married her, I'm like, this is fantastic. I get 2 for 1.
You'll have to ask my husband. I don't know.
But yes, okay. So these agents, see, I think this is badass. Like I can see a world where this is meaningful to me because this is keep going. I love this stuff. I think this is cool.
Well, what's really cool is what Williams-Sonoma did. And I think we're starting to see more examples of this type of an agent. Is it wasn't just about the shopping experience. It was about solving a need. And for them, their customers coming to them for cooking supplies and to for their dining table. And so they're hosting, they're having parties, they're cooking. And so with their agent, they wanted to help their shopper, their customer, help plan their Thanksgiving dinner, their holiday dinner. And so you can engage with Olive and ask for recipes and tips on how to, plan a meal. And then in the course of that interaction, it will help you make sure that you have all of the tools that you need while you're going through your meal planning process or your hosting planning process. So in the conversation and in the process of planning, you can do everything you need in that one interaction. And so I think it's solving something that's beyond, it goes greater than just shopping, right? It's solving a need, a problem in your life. And I just think it's such a great example. And I think we're going to see more of these types of agents pop up from the brand, from the D2C side, where the brand has a particular voice and expertise in a particular product category. And that agent is going to speak with authority and knowledge and expertise from that. So, you think about like all of the, great athletic shoe companies, there's so many things that go into picking the right running shoe. I don't know anything about that, but an agent would, and the brand would, that owns all of that data. Or my favorite use case is like beauty, right? And you can get a whole new makeup routine just by putting a picture of your face through these agents. So there's so many cool use cases.
Yeah, not to mention the AOV increase. I'd love to see the Williams-Sonoma data to see that percentage of AOV increase after implementing the agent, because I bet it's significant.
Oh yeah.
Sure. So breaking news, I'm not a writer, but I've been working on this article because this is the pinnacle of what I'm excited about AI. Yeah. Because what you're describing is you're emulating to the best relevance and to the best context and the best experiential on a screen to what it's like walking into a store. Yes. And getting a phenomenal human that knows it and asks the right questions, and you get this interactive thing and they get to know. I'm most excited about this. Now, I had this idea in 2013 and I wrote about how it was the right idea, not good timing. The tech wasn't there, but this is what I'm most excited about with AI and as far as e-commerce and shopping. So yeah, I love Williams-Sonoma. They're OG, baby.
Oh, me too.
They are. Well, I think it's cool because it's a level of personalization in digital that we've never been able to achieve before. And just like you said, it's like going to a store and talking to the most knowledgeable sales associate on the floor. Now you have this sales associate wherever you are for whatever you need online from the comfort of your home. And even what we're seeing in our data is it's not like this technology is applicable outside of digital. So we see consumers are using these tools while they're in the store. In fact, I've used it while I'm in Lowe's to, I'm a terrible planner, but I also love to DIY. And so I'll just go into Lowe's and I have a vision in my head.
Oh, wait.
I don't know exactly what I'm looking for.
What's the latest project, Caila? Let's get into this.
So my vision is I'm looking at my hallway. I want to do picture box molding on my hallway.
Ooh.
Right? Really pretty. But I actually did. So I did do this. I screenshotted a picture from Pinterest that I really wanted to like replicate. And then I did thankfully have the dimensions of my wall. And so I just put it into ChatGPT and I put the picture, I put the dimensions, and I said, like, what do I need to buy? What is my blueprint? And I said, I'm in Lowe's. It gave me everything down to the product number, the bay number, where I needed to go in Lowe's to find.
Wow.
I actually have all of the materials I'm looking at.
Wow.
Here.
Wow.
Right? So cool. And then it gave me the cut list. So it said everything, like all of the different cuts I needed to make. And it mocked it up how it would look, like a picture of it in real life. And it did it in like 2 minutes versus I would have probably been standing in the aisle for 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh. I would have drawn a picture on a piece of paper, gotten my measuring tape out 100 times.
Yep. I probably would have had to make 5 trips back to Lowe's.
Yep. Yep.
I would have come up with the idea, and then my wife, who's about 1,000 times more handy, she would have been like, yeah, just stop. You don't need to come with me. Just go do something. Leave me alone. I'll get this done. That's what I had. That's amazing.
I love it.
Right?
But that's a perfect example of a customer service experience without having that actual person-to-person conversation. So great example there.
All right. Getting you out of here on this. All the data, all the consumer tracking, everything that you see through this whole, again, year over year, and all the different trends and signals from your standpoint, based on the Salesforce data, right? Yep. Where are we heading for this holiday season? Because typically the Cyber Week, whatever you want to call it, is a pretty big indicator of how this is all going to shape out.
Yeah. So what I'm sensing, we have two different consumers. We have the US consumer, and then we have the rest of the world and the European consumer. In the US, I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw last year, which was that shoppers came out fast and furious for Cyber Week. There was a lot of activity. And once Cyber Week was over, it really calmed down. Everything cooled off. Things really fell off for digital.
No. The only caveat I want to say, that disclaimer, sorry to interrupt you, is last year, which happens every 7 to 8 years, we had the shortest amount of days between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We've gained a little bit of that back this year, just the way it's placed. And there was a huge psychological, it was like, everybody was like, just Thanksgiving is over. It's like, it's Christmas in 5 minutes.
Well, we only gained 1 day this year.
I know we only gained 1 day, but it feels like longer.
That 1 day, the 24 hours. Yeah, true. And I think what I think we'll see is a small bump for those that have stores and have BOPIS. We'll see a bump at the end of the season for the last minute shopper. Mm-hmm. And that will be a big boost for those retailers. I think what we'll see is we'll probably start to see some early returns, which we saw last year. Shoppers, kind of going through, taking inventory and saying, okay, I want to get this off my credit card balance before I have to pay it at the end of the month. So we might see an increase in returns, as we get later in the month. I think the European consumer will continue to spend. Their data looks really strong. It looked really strong heading into Cyber Week. Even, just looking at the post Cyber Monday so far, it continues to be strong, but it's a very different consumer there right now. But, overall for the season, we're expecting about a 2% increase in overall sales for the US for digital. And so based on what we saw over Cyber Week and what we saw leading into, that seems to be probably what will happen.
That's where my fortune teller said we'd end up for holiday. I'm more concerned about 2026. And if, again, this all goes well, we would love to have you back. Once you start digging into Q1 and you kind of, there's some speculative things about how we're going to go. We don't know what the world looks like then. But I love your European data because they had way higher inflation. They had their labor market was screwed up. The Brexit thing was not fully cooked. Yeah. There was a lot going on there. They had a big leadership in a lot of different, in Germany, which is a high economic driver. So there's way more stability over there, which this is interesting to me because it signifies that there's just not uncertainty there, as much uncertainty there, and they've kind of rallied the troops, so to speak.
Yes. Oh, I will, however, say that there's more stability, but we did have a good example of how quickly the consumer can get rattled. And so at the beginning of last week, beginning of Cyber Week, the UK government announced a tax increase. And when we're in Cyber Week, we're tracking the data by the hour. So we're looking at the trends every single hour. And what happened was in the UK data, we were growing at like 9%, 10%, 12% every single hour. And then when you get to the evening and that price or that tax increase was announced, everything just fell off. And then the next day, the UK was negative, and we were going, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And then thankfully, it kind of stabilized as we got through, once we got to Black Friday and the deals started coming in, so the consumer kind of recovered. But you can just see how quickly the consumer will react to any type of a macroeconomic change. It really is that fast. And so, we are seeing stability there, but it has to stay stable in order for us to
that's probably overstated. I'm not saying there's a lot going on, but boy, we are fragile humans, aren't we?
For sure. Absolutely.
And we've always been fragile, or fragile, as I like to say, but now we just track it. Now you guys, now we have smart people like you, understanding our fragileness every 5 seconds, our mood shifts, like me. So moody, Hayley.
That's why we love you, Scott.
I am so moody. It's ridiculous. Caila Schwartz, has this been fabulous?
I love it. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
And we're just gonna wrap it right here, Hayley. You started this trend a few episodes ago, and I'm leaning in, as they say. And we got to meet Caila because of the nude. And why? Why, Hayley?
Because people matter, Scott.
Oh God, they matter more than ever. And you've been listening to Always
Off.
Caila?
Brand.
There you go. All right.
Love
subscribe,
it.
Do all the things you got to do. We will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Toodaloo.
Hey there, this is Hayley from Quickfire, and they want me to read this so you know what this podcast is part of and how to find out more if you want. Always Off Brand is a production of Quickfire LLC and a part of the Learn and Laugh series on the Quickfire Podcast Network. For more information, go to quickfirenow.com. Have a good one, and thanks for listening.